As we approach the national elections in Poland next month, we've been using KrakCast Profiles to talk about some people from the world of Polish politics. We talked about Donald Tusk, Zbigniew Ziobro, we talked about Morawiecki, and this week we're talking about the current president of Poland, president since 2015, Krakow's own Andrzej Duda. Dr. Mike, what's a good point to jump off? Let's start with maybe his professional CV before he became president.
He basically went to law school here. I mean, he was born in Krakow, raised in Krakow, went to high school in Krakow, then went to Jagiellonian University, studied law here. Then he got his doctorate in law as well, started a law firm. But by the early 2000s, he was already involved in politics, made friends in the right places, or rather didn't make enemies. And before long, he was an undersecretary in the cabinet of President Lech Kaczynski. This we're talking was like 2005-06. Then he ran for he actually ran for president mayor of Krakow. I believe it was in 2009, but lost. He then ran for...
Nobody beats Morawiecki. Nobody.
He was also an undersecretary in the Ministry of Justice during...
He'd be our dream interview, really, wouldn't he? Even if he doesn't speak English. I'd just love to get him.
Just give him a bottle of whiskey and
How is his English, by the way? Does anybody know?
I don't think he even knows.
No? Okay. Right.
Johnny Wall.
That's no. Come on, now, Mikey. Keep it above the belt. A few whacks, but
okay. Where were we?
Truth hurts. And he, was undersecretary in the staff for the Ministry of Justice as well. He worked for the staff of Lech Kaczynski. He ran for a mayorship here in Krakow, but lost. But then he also afterwards he ran for Sejm and won. I believe it was in 2010. And he served in Parliament here in Poland in peace already. After earlier back in the day being involved with Unia Wolności, he then became a member of the European Parliament in 2014, and then he was suggested as a candidate for president by PiS and won in 2015.
Pretty rapid rise, it sounds like.
Yeah, he was kind of like nowhere but everywhere at the same time. When he was in Parliament here, he was often like shown as being not a very partisan person, but an active member of Parliament who was always open to debate and to the opposition. But generally everybody had a positive opinion of him. Nobody seemed to get mad at him. He never said anything too controversial back then, which is probably why PiS decided to have him as candidate for president, because they knew Kaczynski wouldn't win.
Could it be that he brought actually quietly a revolution to Polish politics? He introduced something known as the smile.
Yeah, he's definitely a happier, nicer,
likability factor.
He does do one thing which I don't like, and my wife always also despises, is during any speeches, he kind of has that kind of almost, he's talking from an altar as like a priest, where he talks really loudly for a while, then pauses. Because we have to think about what he just said.
Like an actor's touch. Or
like an actor's touch, or like a bad priest or something like that. And that is a little bit annoying. But besides, that's the worst thing you can really say about him in his
political
career.
Before we dive deeper into this, Dr. Mike, can you kind of outline kind of the fundamental job duties of the president as opposed to the prime minister in Poland?
Yes, the president in Poland has a lot less power than other countries. It's more of a representative role. He's the head of state. He has veto power in a few situations. He signs in laws once it's gone through the upper and lower houses of parliament. As well, he can introduce legislation.
But I mean, I have to step in here and disagree. I mean, he should have less power really in this political setup. Polish presidents traditionally meddle quite a lot, I would say. He hasn't do it himself. Kicked back several bills and constitutional judge appointments.
I
agree with him on a lot of it. But he has exercised that power.
It's like this. They don't have much power here, but they have enough power to be annoying at certain points.
In Ireland, it's a complete no-no for the president
to actually use any of his powers.
It's like the Queen,
like Wałęsa in the early 90s was one of those presidents that actually used the little bit of power they had. But a lot of political parties like Cookies have basically said, either make the president just a figurehead or make our system presidential. Not this kind of,
agree with
not this in between where it becomes awkward at, certain international summits where the prime minister and the president is there and who actually has the final say. The president is also technically the commander in chief, even though the prime minister has his own military department and ministry involved with the military as well, and the head of the military. And there's always questions about, like, during emergency situation, who exactly is in charge of what at what time.
I've always got the feeling that when they were designing the Polish government, there was this weird mixture of kind of Chicago boy economists and European parliamentarists.
It's kind of like that, and lots of compromises and like, okay, let's just do this And let's hope that this nightmare scenario never happens. And in politics, nightmare scenarios happen all the time, where all of a sudden you don't know who's in charge.
I mean, we shouldn't overegg. I mean, the president of Poland has never really pushed, and vetoed every bill. There has been that tradition, weirdly, that they seem to get involved.
Yeah, that was Wałęsa. Kaczynski was really laid back and didn't do anything except drink a lot.
That counts.
Mikey's really on the drinking habits of the Polish elite here,
Well, the thing is, it's like they say they don't anymore, but it still happens, especially anybody who was involved with politics before the 90s.
Well, Kwasniewski was a heavy hitter in that department too, I think. It wasn't he? That was second half of the 90s. Dr. Mike, isn't it a little bit, what's the word, maybe ironic that because the Polish president's hands are kind of tied and, because he has kind of limited powers, that keeps him out of nasty political fights in parliament, which improves his standing among the voters and the people. He always seems above political partisanship, which makes him look good. And it's really because he doesn't have the authority to get involved.
It definitely helps. I mean, one tradition here in Poland is that once you're president-elect, you give up your mandate or your political you say, I am no longer part of the party that I came from, even though everybody knows that you're still from whatever party you came from. The president does have influence to a certain degree, but he can always just exactly like you said, step back and pretend I'm just here, to look good in front of photo ops and stuff.
And he
like
does that, yeah.
And he's good at that. He's got the family, he's got the daughter. He's able to actually smile and joke, and even if you don't agree with him once in a while with some kind of political scenario, it's usually not that big of a deal.
One kind of big exception to this, exception to the rule that generally speaking he doesn't get involved in nasty political fights. This took place not long after he took office. And it involves the Constitutional Court and the swearing in of the judges.
Yes, right after.
And this was a very bitter political fight.
Just between the era when PO was out of government and peace came in, there was that scenario where PO brought in 5 new judges to the Constitutional Court. Even the High Court decided that, only 3 of those were technically legal.
Check out our special on the Constitutional
Yes, we've gone over this a lot of times, but basically the president decided not to swear in any of those 5 and wait until peace presented their new 5 ones. And the question was this constitutionally appropriate or not?
It's something that we should just for a second dwell on, though, because I'm sure a lot of people that listen haven't heard that episode. It was quite early in our run, and the point here is that a lot of people from the outside believe the whole Constitutional Court reform purge, as it's called in the Western press, started with peace when they got into power, but in fact it was kind of the fires were ignited by PO trying to kind of stuff the bench just before they left power. Would that be
basically? Yeah, they overplayed their hand. They could have brought in a few new judges, but they tried to squeeze in a few more, and peace used this as an excuse to get rid of everybody. And just basically, one side broke the rules, the other side broke the rules, and this is why peace and PO in a lot of ways are very similar.
We try and go back and tie in how peace won that election a lot when we speak, and that alongside the Vopros tape scandal, that really it was. They pushed just on the wrong topic with peace, because they've always gone after the courts and the Ministry of Justice as a big place for reform, and blew up in their faces, really.
There was one other time when Duda was involved when he got in the middle of a really nasty political battle, and that was with the when he said he would not sign the so-called Holocaust bill into law.
Yeah, that was
with Ziobro.
Exactly. Well, him and Ziobro have had a little bad blood as well, especially since Ziobro apparently really hates Duda because he supported Duda to get into the...
Ziobro, the justice minister, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Helped...
the one who pours oil on ruffled waters, kind of concept.
He helped Duda when Duda was part of Lech Kaczynski's cabinet, but then when Ziobro was thrown out of government, during the first peace government, he got pissed off at Duda not following him out as well. So apparently there's a little bad blood there. But Ziobro was always...
Seems like a really pissy reason to, fall out with someone. It sounds like they never were friends in the first place.
Yeah, there was more of acquaintances by convenience. And Ziobro is one of those people that apparently really...
never mastered to smile like Andrzej did. I reckon
exactly.
He's jealous.
No, but
slight tangent here. You mentioned Ziobro. Ziobro is a Krakow guy also, right? And is it just coincidence? I guess it is, but is there anything to the fact that, they're both Krakow guys, both very senior figures in peace, and yet Krakow not at all a peace city? Is there kind
it's not a peace city, but you have the Jagiellonian University here, which, a lot of people go through law school here. And because of that, a lot of lawyers end up being involved with politics as well. So I think that kind of might have to do with it, why. But yeah.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah, but Krakow generally politically speaking.
The 2 right-wing people might live in Krakow, John. Yeah, I would say so.
Well, no, Krakow's... I wouldn't call it reliably left, but it's kind of middle to left.
Shows
look at Marhovsky. There's never a peace mayor
in most
here, right?
developed democracies.
Open carry.
The margins are small. The divide between left and right is not miles away from 50-50 usually.
That's true.
And the whole left-right thing is a very weird spectrum to begin with.
Yeah.
Because Krakow is generally considered a very conservative town.
Exactly. It's got that weird mix of religion and kind of liberalism.
But then you have to remember that Peace isn't exactly a conservative party completely as well. They have a lot of nationalistic kind of slogans, but a lot of their policies are a little, socialist leftist. It's kind of quirky in that way. So when people vote,
quirky only from the lens of Western politics. When you remember this is was a socialist state up to 89, and then these guys all came from the same political organism and then branched out, and some embrace social spending more than others, I suppose. But it doesn't really seem to be a left-right divide. It seems to be classic conservative issues, social issues that divide Poland down left and right rather than.
It's definitely more of a social economic divide.
The left-right economic thing doesn't seem to be as big an issue.
I follow Duda on Facebook. He doesn't follow me for some reason, but maybe he's yet to get around to that. But one day,
missing out, John.
Anyway, I see a lot of pictures because whoever runs his account is very active. And
apparently, he's the one who runs it.
You think so?
Yeah, he's personally involved.
If he's president, he doesn't have a lot to do apart from
true.
signing the odd bill from time to time.
Like a couple of times a week, I see pictures of him, greeting foreign heads of state, making a speech in some small town, kissing babies, taking selfies. And he seems really good at this. He's got that likability factor we mentioned earlier. He's got, easy smile. And he seems to fill the role of a president very well in the sense that, his main job is to not make Poland look bad, is to just shake the right hands and smile and for the cameras and just, fill a space on the podium sometimes. And he seems to do that very well.
This is why I think next year when the elections happen, he's more than likely to win because all the opposition parties actually haven't even tried presenting any politicians as potential candidates against him. There's nobody with enough personality. I mean, Tusk maybe, but I think Tusk would be more interested in actually winning a real political position as in prime minister.
He can be funny, Tusk, but he hasn't fully mastered the smile either.
No, he hasn't. And it's more of like that cringy kind of snaky smile.
It's like baring of the teeth.
I know this is totally speculative, but I always thought Shetnia was the left's attempt to capture the smile market demographic, and that's why they had his teeth done and pushed him out there.
The funny thing is, Satina is actually in PO, the right wing of that party. He's the one who tried to keep them more conservative, kind of, like Merkel or something like that in Germany.
Now that he stepped back, he's got the cooler title anyway, chairman.
Dr. Mike, you say Duda's up for re-election next year. Of course, 2020 will be 5 years since his re-election. That's the term. Since his initial election, that's the 5 years is the term for the Polish presidency. Are there term limits on the Polish presidency? Is he only looking at maximum of 10 years?
Yeah, basically that's how it works here in Poland. I mean,
I wonder where they got that from.
It just works better. It's like Lech tried to run for, Wałęsa tried to run for a second term, he lost. Then you had Kwaśniewski, who had 2 terms, didn't run again. And after that, we had Kaczynski, who didn't run again because he was involved in a tragic air accident that kind of ruined his political career. So he had Komorowski, who ran, but he lost after his first term. And you had Duda. And Duda I'm guessing Duda will be a 2-term president.
Interesting fact, I'm looking at a list of Poland's post-communist presidents. Nobody has successfully won a second term. Well, no, there's a couple of ones missing there. It got complicated in the early teens. Komorowski was...
Give him a chance to correct himself before...
Well, yeah, like Jaruzelski or something like that, but let's not even talk about that.
Petnia was there for like a month, literally a month as president. So a little bit of stability, I guess, maybe, huh?
Right in the early 90s, that was a messy scenario. Yeah, we don't talk about that.
Anybody, let me try to say that again. Anybody on the left of Polish politics has even the slightest chance of competing with him as things stands now?
I honestly don't know who they could present.
I don't think Tusk is bothered with it. I don't think at this stage, certainly. I think someday he
Well, I mean, I was going to say,
he's not right back in the ring right now, he'd have a great chance.
I mean, he's going to be heading back from Brussels at some point sooner rather than later, I think. So he might well kind of...
I think he'll give this one a miss, but honestly, I think he'd have a chance if he did stand. He's got charisma. He's got something about him. He's got a record to point to at least.
But the problem with Tusk is like Duda right now has a 70-some% approval rating. Most people are okay with him. Tusk, yes, there's a strong percentage of people that really like him, but then you've got all the peace people that hate him.
Yeah, he starts out with an automatic 40% hate.
Yeah, and
minimum.
Those middle ground people are more likely to vote for whoever's the incumbent.
I have a feeling a lot of people in Poland wouldn't mind the idea of having something like a president that maybe is not as to the right, you know, to show the world that we're a vibrant democracy. And I think Donald Tusk is certainly.
Wait. So if you're not on the right, then you're being democratic?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting slant.
What I mean is that I think you think people would automatically. What you said is that automatically Donald Tusk loses the right wing in Polish politics. That's the point I was addressing. And what I'm saying is, what about the fact that it's only the presidency? It's not domestic politics. If he came back in at a parliamentary level, I think he'd get crushed because never go back. You know, it's a vicious dogfight. But presidential politics is different. You know, it's more about the optics. It's more about the speeches. It's more about the TV appearances. And I honestly think if Tusk put his mind to it and actually ran hard, I think he'd give him a great run for his money. Because Duda, for all his smiling, he's a bit of an empty suit for me.
Well, I agree with you, Dave, in the sense that it would be competitive in a way that any other race would not be right
That's
now.
The point.
Not necessarily Tusk would win, but it would be a race.
Give him a run. That's what I said.
Actually, I think actually Peace wouldn't mind Tusk being in charge, because if Peace is in charge of the government still, they're still running the show. But, you know, they could present to the world, well, look, we have this person in opposition who can't really do anything except being annoying once in a while.
And that's what a lot of voters will calculate.
Not going to happen. What's Tusk's salary in Brussels, right? It was €500,000
All right,
or something.
look, there's nothing in it for DT. He probably won't bother his ass, but
DT.
I just think if he did, it's a hypothetical scenario, and I think if he did, he'd have a good chance of making a well,
there's no dirt on Duda, and that's just something horrible we don't know about. There's no dirt on Duda. He doesn't seem to have made any huge mistakes during the last 4 years.
He uses a high quality toothpaste.
There's no real basis for kind of serious attacks on him right now. I guess things can change between now and next year. Good smile, good hair, and just he's a good.
Keeps the suit simple, black, nice white shirt usually. You know, well tailored.
Well,
so that's our thorough evisceration of the sitting.
Yeah, we're looking for an angle to attack him on. There's nothing there.
We've spun that out to 17 minutes already.
His daughter actually used to go to the gym right around the corner from here, Atlantic. I know.
Right.
So there's that.
All right, conclusions. What do you think of him as a politician? Would you vote for him?
Yeah, I would.
You know what? It depends on who they put against him, but generally, I think I'd vote him just because I have nothing against the guy.
Perfect caveat. Really does depend who he was up against, but yeah.
Well, our next
profile
coming up, I don't know, soon is going to be on the godfather of them all, the guy who pulls the strings in Polish politics, Mr. Kaczynski himself, and that'll be our last profile before the elections. And then I think after 5 politicians, I guess it's time to look at a different aspect of Polish life, don't you think?
Yeah, I think
who's next?
Kaczynski,
the man,
Jarek.
Yes, the top of the mountain, the CEO.
The big, big is not quite.
The puppet, he's not big.
The small cheese.
The puppet master, whatever you want to call him. That'll be our last KrakCast profile. But again, next week, maybe 2 weeks, I don't know, we'll see. Well, there's everything you need to know, but not really about Andrzej Duda. Thanks for listening to Profiles, as always, and we'll see you next time on the KrakCast.